Hey guys, what's going on? I'm David Avalon here with my co-host Robert Drysdale, back for another episode of Breaking the Guard. First of all, I'd like to thank Robert once again.
So, in case you guys are wondering what Breaking the Guard is really about, it's nothing to do with the podcast. It's just Dave's way of getting me to come over and help him move heavy stuff. Exactly. That piano was costing me, for the record. Like that one time. Holy shit.
Yeah.
No, all good fun though. Dave, what's new, man?
Well, finished the first in-home camp here in Vegas last week.
Yep.
That was a lot of fun. We had a smaller group because we had a lot of people cancel in the last minute.
Of course.
COVID, and some people just couldn't come because travel restrictions. So, but it worked out really nice. You know, we had a good group of guys, and some people asked me, "What's the average age of the camps?" I said, "This one, old." Right?
Yeah.
It was all people 50 plus. It was
It's
52, 53, 57. It was and we had one year we got Joey coming in. Obviously, he was like 21. He was the baby of the group.
he messed up the average.
He messed up the average.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's really, I was really happy to see that because these guys, even though when I was a kid, you said you're 50, you're like, oh, you're old.
Yeah.
Right? And these guys were moving great, man.
Yeah.
They're still moving good.
I think 50-year-olds are healthier than they've ever been before. You know,
Yeah.
surgery, diet, everything has improved, right? Medicine has improved, so quality of life improves with it. I think grappling, though, like jiu-jitsu, the jiu-jitsu world in general is very unusual in that, you know, there's more longevity to it. Like, you don't see, what's the average age in any wrestling room? My guess would be the average age is, what, 19 maybe?
For wrestlers, for sure.
Yeah, like it's something like that. Like you're going to start in high school, and by the time you're out of college, or, you know, there's some clubs out there with older men do practice, but they're exceptions. They're very rare.
Yeah.
I think the average age in a jiu-jitsu room is going to be 30, 35 maybe. I don't know, 30 plus. I think
30
that'd be
plus, I think for sure.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons is there's less impact. Like you couldn't spar Muay Thai live all the time. You kill yourself. Wrestling, judo, they're all rough on the body because of impact, right? Grappling has less impact. So I think there's still injuries, don't get me wrong, but I think the longevity is a little higher. They're more welcoming to people in that age bracket.
And you can also, it's a lot more tailor-made, right? Like if you want to start from your feet, you can. If you want to start from your back, you can. If you want to do like a slower roll, you know,
True.
It's possible. I can't slowly suplex you, right? Like,
yes, no, you can't. No.
It's either you're going or you're not.
It's so true.
Yeah.
I never thought of it that way, but you're right. Like you can't be a good striker or a good wrestler without being explosive.
Yeah.
You can't do it in slow motion. Like it's just, I mean, unless you're like Cael Sanderson, you might be able to wrestle in slow motion, take people down, but for the most part, it's not very common.
Yeah.
In jiu-jitsu, you can be really slow and still be really good.
Yeah, exactly. You can set up traps, and you can even just with good grips control people.
Pressure.
And walk into a submission, like baby step them in, you know? You can't really do that in wrestling or striking. Like you said, you can't slow mo jab.
Yeah.
You know, we had a guy, I always talk about this guy, Locolo, in my gym. He's 350. He can't really spar with guys who are lightweights because his jab is like someone else's
you can't,
right, you know?
You know, when I was spar, you know, I'm like the heaviest guy, but I'm not light either. And I'd spar with smaller people. I always felt at a disadvantage. I was like, Rob, you're heavier. I was like, yeah, but heavy is only an advantage if I can actually throw hard.
Yeah.
If I'm holding my punches back, I'm slow now, and you're faster than me.
Yeah.
So sparring with smaller guys was actually, I was at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because their advantage is speed, and they're allowed to move as fast as they want. That's never bad.
Yeah.
But if I hit them as hard as I can, I'm an asshole.
Yeah.
So it was always difficult to find that balance in striking.
Yeah, I've felt that many times. Because for some reason, I'm not a bigger guy, especially compared to you, but like in Miami, where I was training at, they were all like 140s and under.
Oh,
so a lot of times I was sparring, I'm fighting a guy that's 120 or whatnot, and like you said, you're holding back, and then they're going,
but they're not.
But they're going full blast because like, oh, this big guy's gonna knock my head off. I'm like, no, I'm not.
It's
like
so true.
Eating calf kicks and stuff.
No, they're going to town, and you're like 50%. It sucks. And then if you go balls to the wall, of course,
then you're a jerk. Yeah,
you're a jerk. Yeah. Man, what else, Dave? We haven't talked in a while.
Oh, but the big news that you had brought up earlier was that the IBJJF is now allowing heel hooks and reaping.
I am so happy about that.
Yeah.
I think that was the greatest decision they have ever made in a long time because you can't limit the arsenal, man. You can't close it.
And that's official now, right?
It's official. Well, they've been talking about it for quite some time, and I've participated in a couple of these meetings of like discussing, and it was unanimous. Like they ask all the coaches, because normally when they make decisions like this, they're actually pretty open to debate. They're more open than people think they are. You just got to be reasonable when you approach them. Don't approach them with anger. It's like, hey man, why don't you guys do this?
Yeah.
And present your arguments in an intelligent way, and they'll listen. So basically, they approached like some of the head coaches in the sport, and it was like 99% of them were in favor. The only guy who was against it was Comprito. Sorry to throw him under the bus. I love him, but I guess like, dude, like this. It's because he's more of. I think he's watching out for. I mean, the injury thing is a scary thought. Like I get that because it's a short lever, and it's not like you're popping your arm. You pop your knee. It's a different kind of injury. Like you popped your elbow before. It's nothing. You're back on the mats in 2 weeks. Like it's not that big of a deal. Pop your knee on a heel hook or a toe hold. The other thing is that the toe hold is remarkably similar to the heel hook.
It's the same. Worse.
Yeah, it's the same lever. It's a rotational motion on the knee and the ankle. So it's a spiral, right? Like I always thought it's strange that they allow the toe hold but not the heel hook.
I never understood that either because I've seen devastating toe hold injuries. Like one of my students, he's the one who got toe holds taken out of Nagas. It's Enrico Coco.
Yeah.
Back when he was a teenager, it was like his first Naga, I think. And it was in Orlando.
Blew the guy's knee.
He was like 12 years old. He was a kid, but they allowed toe holds back then. And he got the kid a toe hold, and the kid was wearing wrestling shoes, which didn't help him. And he whack, and the foot just pointed the wrong way. Like, ooh,
it's nasty.
Yeah, so like to me, when I see toe holds, I always think of that. I'm like, man, you get a lot more leverage on a toe hold. If you're on top of it, man, you can really rip.
And like the injury argument is like a good argument, but there has been an educational process, and this is large. I think the submission only movement and the professional events are largely responsible for this. There has been an educational process in the community where people learn how to tap before it hurts. It's not like a choke; you can hold it out an extra second sometimes. You know, like an arm bar, you have plenty of time to make up your mind before you tap. Right? It's a long lever. A heel hook, you don't have a lot. It's like a wrist lock. You have to tap. You verbally tap it normally. And I think there's been an educational process that's been going on the last like 5 years, right? Since they've been very popular. And people, they're seeing that the injury ratio is not that high as long as you have educated competitors. Because like, when's the last time you saw, I mean, it does happen, like the Vinny with like Craig thing. But Vinny's being incredibly stubborn. He could have tapped before. I didn't feel it. Like, you can't tell me you felt no pressure on that foot, man. You felt something, right? You just decided to hold back. And you know what? Let's see, I've never tapped before. I'm not going to tap now, sort of thing. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that if we educate people and we teach them how to tap, I'm in favor of the heel hooks being legal in the gi. I don't see why not.
Yes, just to be clear for people don't know, this is only no gi, and it's only, I think, was it black belt?
Brown and black
brown
adult.
And black, right?
Adult, not masters.
Yeah, we don't have white belts throwing heel hooks, so.
Which I think is a good first step. I think that's so not, baby steps, right?
No, I mean, even, I think down the road, in my school, we do teach heel hooks to white belts, but there's a lot of education, a lot of warning, and I think competition-wise, it's not needed. There's a lot to work on. You know what I mean? And because if you're competing, maybe that's going to be your first competition as a white belt or as a blue belt, and you might have an ego thing, and the heel hook doesn't really care about your ego.
No,
it's going to destroy it. Yeah. So I can let it slide, like let it go until brown belt. Where at that point you should know. If you don't, shame on you.
You shouldn't be a black belt. Like you should understand. You have at least here's the other advantage. I mean, some people are gonna like look at this like, oh, I'm worried about my knees now in competition. We have to look at longevity of the sport. Like the arsenal, like the plethora of moves has to stay open. The cannon has to stay open, right? Once you close it, and I've made this case, and I wrote this. I don't know if you got onto the book, but I talk about this in the book. That was judo's mistake. They limit the cannon. And when they do that, all they're doing is creating a space for something else to exist. That's all you're doing, right? So you have to keep the cannon as broad as possible, right, in order to keep the martial art very eclectic, very diverse, and willing to absorb new techniques, which Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is surprisingly willing to. Like if you look at like how many wrestling moves translate to BJJ, all of them, except the suplex. It's the only, and you can't suplex. You can suplex on the side, you can't on the neck. That's the only one that's illegal. Yeah. But how many BJJ moves don't translate into wrestling, for example? So like the cannon is very broad. It's just that we have to make sure that it stays that way and we don't close it.
Yeah, no, I agree, and especially if you see the recent trend in world class competitions, is leg lock, leg lock,
Yeah.
leg lock, leg lock. So if we're gonna leave that out in the biggest, I guess, amateur venue possible, that's a big disservice, right?
Yeah.
Because now you're making a big difference between the leagues, and I'm sure IBJJF doesn't want to be seen as, oh, that's like,
Yeah.
that's not the real thing. The real thing is, the submission only or ADCC or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think by adding that in, they bring themselves up to par now. Where okay, now we're all playing with the same moves.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good move.
And actually, it keeps the community broad and big. What happens is, once again, not to get too nerdy on history here, but that's what happened in Brazil. They could no longer agree on the rule set, and once that happens, guess what? You have a split. That's how splits occur. Like, we cannot agree on how we practice. So long as there's agreement, the sport remains unified. I think it's better for everyone because, we want it to be practiced by more people. If you believe that it is healthy lifestyle, if you believe it's good for you, you want more people to practice. The more organized it is, the bigger it gets, the more people practicing, I think jiu-jitsu is on its way to become the most practiced martial art in the world. Like, I hope that happens. I don't think it is yet. Some people think it is. I'm not sure. I think it still might be judo. But, I think we're on our way.
It's definitely, well, at least from the States, it's the most popular on its own, and I think by MMA in itself, obviously, is the most publicized and
Correct.
public face. And a lot of people correlate MMA to jiu-jitsu now. So, that's obviously been a big win for the jiu-jitsu community.
Jiu-jitsu has benefited from MMA more than any other martial art.
For sure.
Like, I think wrestling did too. I think there's been an increase. I don't know, but my guess is that there are more kids wrestling now than before the UFC. That'd be my guess.
I would agree in certain senses. I'm not sure, just not because from a public perception, but because of laws like Title IX or whatnot really destroyed wrestling programs.
Okay.
But I'm thinking back like a decade ago. I'm not sure how that's happening now. But definitely there's a lot more respect given to wrestling.
Yeah.
I know back in the day, people were, wrestling, oh, you just some weird dudes wrestling with little leotards.
Exactly.
Now people look at wrestlers, oh, that guy could hurt me.
He could fight. No, and they weren't fighters before.
Yeah, they
were not considered fighters or martial artists, which they are. But we associate the term martial art with something Asian, right? Like everything that is Western is not. One reason why that is, and this is my suspicion, don't quote me on it, is that the West, right, Europe, the Americas, they became their feudal age ended a long time ago. So we went to this. They acquired firearms much before Japan did. So Japan, by holding off, their feudal age was extended until the 1800s. So that martial culture was very, very present in Japan, where these martial arts existed in Europe. Like there was grappling in Europe before, but once you invented firearms, why are soldiers going to keep practicing? It's one of those things. Well, just pick up a gun. It makes a lot more sense, right? Whereas Japan, because their feudal age was extended into the 1800s, I think they kept the practice of a martial culture alive in a way that the West didn't. And wrestling survived, but that's it. But like wrestling survived, and I think wrestling's the only exception. I can't think of, but like. These martial arts existed in Western countries. It's not like only Japan had martial arts, but I think it might have to do with the fact that Japan wasn't, open to the world until late in the 1800s.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I think, there's a lot of skills required with handling firearms and whatnot, but I think the level of discipline in training in martial arts is probably very different, especially
100%.
Especially since firearms were relatively new, so the level of proficiency would have probably been way below. And the tools itself, it's very different than it is now. Because you have guys who like John Wicks or whatnot, that there's all sorts of skills that you can have with firearms that can make it a martial art in itself, just handling it. But I think back then when you're dealing with a musket.
It would be far more efficient. Like I would not be scared of a guy with a musket. Like I'm sorry. You have to be far away. And I know how far away you can't hit me because the accuracy on those things are horrible. Yeah,
it's pretty crazy seeing how like if you see people loading it and stuff, it's wild. But that's interesting about Japan though being
because it's unusual. Their feudal age was extended longer than any other country in the world. So maybe that played a role because the feudal mentality is a very martial mentality. Feudal lords fighting for the constant conflict. It's the same thing in Europe. It was not so different, not the same but different. But they were constantly in a state of warfare. Because, a bunch of little small kingdoms battling, in the case of Japan, lords. But I think that probably created a martial culture that lived well into the 18th century, 19th century, sorry. Going back to the heel hook thing, switching gears a little bit, going back to our original topic, I think that I wonder how the jiu-jitsu world is going to react to it if a lot of the people that were boycotting IBJJF are going to continue to do that. That's the only question. If they're going to be a holdout and going to be like, we're going to stick to this right here and we're not going to be absorbed. Or, because that's what the Gracies did. Like, we're not changing, right? If it's going to be one of those things, or is it going to be, it just makes a lot more sense to be absorbed, right? Because at the end of the day, say what you want about IBJJF, but they are at the forefront of the growth of jiu-jitsu around the world. There's no organization in the grappling world. Like, ADCC doesn't come close, in my opinion, as far as promoting the sport, even though the technical level is higher than IBJJF, in my opinion, right? But as far as promotion of the sport, I think for a sport to grow, for wrestling needs a fila. Judo needed its Kodokan. Like, jiu-jitsu needs its IBJJF. And even my disagreements with them, which are many, I think that was a very positive step in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the IBJJF scheduled events, it's just slam-packed.
Oh, sometimes 3 a weekend.
Yeah, and they're all over the world. It's happening a lot. So like you said, they're like it or not, they are the
face of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. So without them there, you would lose a lot of players, and you would lose that worldwide presence for sure.
And the other thing is, like, competition is what makes a sport. Competition is super important, man. Like, people don't realize how important competing is. Even if most people don't compete, what competition does is that it creates this conflict between rivals, right? You have this friction. Like, I want to beat you, you want to beat me, and it's like an arms race, right? What does that do to the technical level of the sport?
Yeah, right.
If there's no competition, what happens? What's the incentive to really? That's what happens to a lot of martial arts that aren't competitive. They become so theoretical. There's no validity to actual, you can't implement that in real life. And I think that by doing this, like by having tournaments in Africa, by having tournaments in Asia, by having tournaments all over the Americas, what you do is you create these pockets of arms race, like all these arms races going on in all these different countries. And that right there elevates the level, and it makes it engaging too. Like, when you're in competition mode, man, it's fun. Yeah. Like, being in that world, like, am I going to fight next weekend? Am I going to beat that guy? You're super nervous. The guy beat you last tournament. You got to outsmart him this tournament. I think that keeps so many competitors, so many practitioners motivated to stay in the gym.
I think what you said about the technical level is very true. Myself and my brother, most of our learning early on was done in competition, because we didn't have a sensei or a master teaching us. It was me and him. So whenever we competed, we filmed it. And we were using VHS tape, mini cam, whatever, and then we would film it. After the match, we'd watch it, and we would look at the things we did right, and then what our opponents were doing to us. If it was working, okay, how do we integrate that into our game? Now, with the advent of the internet, that makes it so much more powerful, because if you think back in the day, even in our time, I wouldn't know what would happen in the Australian trials, right? They would say, whoever won, that would be it. Yeah. Now we get to see how they won.
How, and pause it and watch it again.
And go, oh crap, man, that guy pulled off some slick stuff, you know? So I think that has probably, and it's happening to every industry, I would imagine, raising the level up significantly, because we could learn from all across the world in an instant. I think that's because now I have people. You have someone like Joey, and the kid's an animal. He's 21 years old. And
he's super technical.
He's rolling,
and he's so strong too.
He's just taking everybody's back.
No, and he's stupid strong for. He's super skinny. Like, I can bend this guy in half. No, he's strong. Holy shit! Yeah.
So but that's crazy. That at 21, I was nowhere near that level. You know what I mean?
Oh no one was. Yeah.
At 21, I was just like wrestler smash.
And it's funny because people don't always appreciate that, because I agree. Like, I'll watch tape. Someone sent me a video of me competing as a brown belt the other day. Competing against him. He had the video and he posted it. I reposted. Like, oh man, I have zero footage of me competing. I didn't film anything, right? I mean, if you look online, you'll find like MMA, a little bit of jiu-jitsu, but like blue, purple, brown, nothing. And I'm like, oh man, it's not too bad. It's okay, pretty good. But I'm like comparing to brown belts today. I'm like, nah, I don't think I would have won.
Yeah.
Like it's just, but it's not a discredit to me or a credit to the younger generations. It is a testament of the growth of the art. Like you have to remember this. Like people, I think we talked about this in the Keenan podcast. Like he always said, like, yeah, Hickson wouldn't win a purple belt tournament today. I'm like, I agree.
Yeah. I
don't think he would. But that's not an insult to Hickson, and neither is it a compliment to Keenan's purple belt. Right. It is a compliment to jiu-jitsu and its growth. That's normal. You're going to put a swimmer from the 1980s in a swimming pool with Michael Phelps, and you think, like, who are we kidding here? Of course he's going to lose, but that's good. That's how the sport should be evolved. You want the sport to be fossilized in the 1980s, and this is what we have, and it's not going to get better than this. Like, we peaked in the 1980s. Yeah, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Is that what you want? You want the sport? Okay, we peaked in the 1980s, and you think that's good for the sport? Yeah. Come on. That was the beginning of our history, man. Like, I think, and I write this in the book, like the history of jiu-jitsu really begins in 94. Before that, they were doing judo. They don't like it, but it's true. It was just modified. Like jiu-jitsu, as we know, it got sophisticated after IBJJF. That's when competition raised the bar. Dude, you can watch footage of these guys going in the 1980s. What were they doing? They were good grapplers, but that was basic. They were doing basic judo.
And even if you look at early UFCs, where we're talking about 93 and up, that's super basic stuff.
Oh, too. Very basic. Like I've fantasized about this more times than I can count. From the time machine, if I could go back to 93 with my skills, I would have won the UFC so many times.
Oh, it would be no contest.
I'd be like, I beat everyone.
Just like Hoist was turning people up. I mean, Hoist's jiu-jitsu game was super basic, but it was just all that was needed.
It was way better than what everyone else was doing.
Yeah, I remember I didn't learn like a omoplata until like 2000 something. Yeah, like the first jiu-jitsu I learned was also super basic. Oh. It was like arm bar. I mean, I learned heel hooks, neck cranks, and all the dirty stuff. Yeah, but it's like I learned all the curse words. Yeah, and that.
Yeah, that's like when you learn a new language. You always learn bad words, and then you learn nouns.
Yeah, I was like learning half crucifixes and all these crazy. That's why a lot of people thought, oh, you're a catch wrestling guy. I'm like, no, I mean, I just learned these. But
you are an example. There's a lot of people like you. I think you and your brother, the difference is you guys did really well in competition, whereas that first generation of practitioners in the U.S., they were learning from VHS tapes as well. Mm-hmm. Like there were how many times have I heard that story of the guy who just gets buy some mats in his garage with his buddies, they're watching VHS tapes, and next thing you know, that guy is promoted to blue, and then Brazilian comes visit 2 years later, gives him a purple belt, and those are like the very first generation of American practitioners. They were winging it if they were borrowing from wrestling, maybe or judo or catch wrestling. But for the most part, a sport when it's new anywhere, people are kind of winging it. You are your own coach, and that was the same case in Brazil when Carlos and those guys were creating what we now call Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and they were winging it a lot. It's not like they had a vast experience with anyone really. A lot of it was just like, what's that book over there? Oh, that looks like a good move. Add it to the curriculum, right? What was that move from Luta Livre over there? Oh, that was really good. That works. Even capoeira, they're borrowing, right?
Yeah.
And I think we still do that. It's just that jiu-jitsu has gone so big now. You don't have to go fish for moves in other martial arts. You can just watch flow grappling and, pause, rewind, and watch again what those blue belts are doing. It's like, there's tons of innovation going on at the blue belt level, So imagine the black. So I think it's a testament of the growth of the sport. Like people should not give themselves too much credit. Younger generations should not give themselves too much credit because they didn't do much. They got it all digested. Previous generations do the hard work. You got to give the previous generations their credit for laying the groundwork, right? And I think that's where this conversation gets a little lost. New jiu-jitsu is bad, old school is useless, and I think they're, it's the same thing. It's just one trajectory.
You can't have one without the other one.
You can't have one without the other, exactly.
I'll be curious to see how the first few tournaments go once they start doing no-gi heel hooks, because what I'm going to picture is that right now, since we only see them in sub-only and ACC, there's not as high of a frequency of this competition. So like we were talking about, there's not as much time for people to innovate or to explore these positions in competition. But once we start doing it in IBJJF, there's going to be a lot more people doing it just because the tournaments are bigger and they're more varied. There's more of them going on. So I wonder if the defense level is going to rise up a lot.
100%, yeah.
Or if the offense is going to go up. Like I'm wondering, because some people are like, oh, is the leg lock game is here to stay, or is it going to change?
I think it's never going to go away. But you remember when Berimbolo started,
Yeah.
maybe 10 years ago, whatever, it was like a fad, and everyone, this is like and then after the minute there, we're like, no one could stop Rafael Mendes' Berimbolo. And then Augusto Mendes came in like, wait a second, this is how you do it. And he stopped them every single time, shut them down, every single time, beats them twice, right? And I think that's, and just like these things come and go. I always remember the minute there where people were like, I remember when people first started playing Spider Guard. Like it was like, I knew 3 Spider Guard sweeps. I'm like, man, I know real jiu-jitsu, man. My jiu-jitsu is like, 3 sweeps.
Yeah.
But it was something that was revolutionary at the time because no one was, people weren't using it efficiently. Heel hooks fall into that category. They're gonna be neutralized. They're not gonna go away. Just like a rear naked choke never went away. People know not to give the back, but people still get caught.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be a surprise. I have no idea what's going on. I think one reason why, and this is a compliment to someone like Lachlan, for example, is that, he was doing something that a lot of his opponents at ACC were not doing. He had raised the bar in that particular fight in a way, that Patrick Gaudio wasn't, or Muhammad Ali wasn't, because you could see they're calm. I mean, Lachlan, I know what he thinks. Like, you guys should be panicking right now. Like, get the hell out of here. You can see they're almost like relaxed because their knee is free.
Yeah.
What they didn't expect is Lachlan could bring that knee back into that knee, behind that knee line, because he had raised the bar there so much in that fight. But you think that's going to happen next at ACC? I seriously doubt it, because everyone's got their eyes watching what he's doing. Everyone in his division and in the open now too. We watch. Okay, what is this guy doing? They're going to study it. Are they going to make the same mistakes? I could still see people getting caught. Is it going to happen with the same frequency as it did last ADCC? I highly doubt that, because the tendency is for the defense to catch up to the offense, right? And then it's an arms race, and it never really ends. But I think that it's going to be like Berimbolos never went away, but they're not as unstoppable as they were for a minute there.
Yeah, and now you brought up someone like Lachlan. It is interesting now that you have the active competitors who are releasing instructionals on the stuff that they're doing. Because a part of me has to think like, man, that's kind of like giving away your secrets in a sense.
Yeah.
I know when I struggle with that a little bit. Like, I could have released a Kimura trap system in 2009, and I didn't because I wanted to
use it.
I wanted to use it in 2011. That didn't work out well for me, and then I said, fuck it, let me just get it out there. It turned out better because there was more people on the internet, so I made the launch better. Because 2009 still wasn't as big, as far as like MMA people on the internet. But nowadays, man, like, you're gonna have everybody watching your stuff. But from what I can tell, everybody's showing, a lot of the cutting edge stuff.
It's got to be a conundrum for him, because you go, I can keep this to myself and slow down the rate on which these people will pick up, because like now you have to go through the wars that you went through in the gym to get to that level, because they will get to that level. Yeah. And there's no doubt they're going to get to that level. The question is, how long is it going to take? And not only that, they're watching you do it, and they can pause and watch, which is not the same as an instructional where you're giving away all the details. Yeah. But you'll still pick up a lot from watching. Like, sure. I watched that of him doing it because it's essentially the same move he does to all 3 of them in the ADCC. Yeah. And it's like, I have a good idea of what he's doing, right? And I'm even been able to pull it off in the gym myself. I know, I haven't watched his instructional, I haven't asked him, but I know if I sit down with him and I say, man, what are you doing here? I know he's going to drop like 4 or 5 jewels on me. He's like, oh, okay, I had no idea. Oh, okay, I got it. Oh, that's what you're doing. Okay, got it. So what you do when you introduce an instructional and you give away the true gems, what happens is you're just speeding the process on which a competition is going to be learning. So you're making that a lot, you're shortening the period that would normally take to absorb that move. But at the same time, how much money has he made from it? Yeah. So, and not only that, if you don't release a DVD, someone else will. For sure. So one of your students is going to say F you one of those days, and they're just going to take all your shit. And I'm not going to mention names, but we know that has happened many times in the jiu-jitsu community where someone takes credit for someone else's developments, right? And, money talks, man. At the end of the day, it's...
The way I see it is, one, you have to make your living when you can. Like you said, and nowadays especially, like, the opportunities are pretty vast as far as there's a much bigger scale now on the internet for like online, especially in the martial arts world. Now, I remember before the martial arts world online was like SureDog, Jiu-Jitsu gear, and mixedmartialarts.com.
Oh man, I can take it further back. Remember NHB?
NHB gear, yeah.
NHB gear, yeah. That's way before Sherdog. That's like
Sherdog's way later.
Yeah, I think NHB gear. There was another one. I used to go way back, 99. A forum I used to go on. Was it NHB gear? There were others. There's like two of them.
And NHB gear was the big. It was one of the first ones, and mixedmartialarts.com, I think.
Yeah.
Or MMA TV.
I think I missed that.
That one is a big one too. Those were the two big ones at the time, and Sherdog was coming up around the same time. So I remember those three forums were like the presence of online. Yeah. That's where everybody was talking, and that's when bulletin boards were popular because social media wasn't invented yet. So if you wanted to chat with people, you were going there and you're putting your post, and then you're waiting for someone to respond. Like, so that was the thing.
They were engaging. Like it was like a trap. Yeah, you get sucked into those.
They were like,
that was the social media of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck, I feel old.
Yeah, it's the predecessor of social media with bulletin boards.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean now those things are non-existent pretty much.
Yeah.
Everything's social media, but at the same time you can see stuff everywhere. So I think if you're a martial artist competing, you might as well sell yourself because, as you said, people are going to see it anyways now because you have floor grappling and you have UFC Fight Pass. Your stuff's being shown and people are going to pick it apart, if you're competing. So yeah, in this day and age, it makes more sense just to let the cat out of the bag yourself.
I don't think you can stop monetizing. And like I said, if he doesn't do it, he knows perfectly well someone else will. And not only that, like I think it's kind of I mean, there's something intelligent, in not having your opponents learn from you. But there's also something very noble about giving it away to your opponents, because you're improving on the sport. And I don't want shitty opponents. Why would you want shitty opponents? Yeah. You want to win easy? Yeah. I mean, what does that easy victory do for you? Like for your spirit? Like what does it do? Do it make you feel good? I don't value my easy wins.
Yeah.
I mean, if I name the people, like if I can give you like 10 names that I've beaten in my life, the ones that come to mind are always the good ones.
Yeah.
I don't remember that guy that I tapped in 15 seconds and never saw him again.
Yeah.
So in a way, like, you're doing yourself a favor when you improve on your opponent.
And you're servicing the sport as a whole.
Yeah.
And ultimately you're going to serve yourself in the sense that, as you said, if I had like this killer leg lock game that nobody knew about, and we're like in the Stone Ages, nobody has cameras or anything like that, I could just destroy everybody with leg locks.
Yeah.
And what's that going to do to me? My game's going to stale.
Your ego will feel great. You're going to feel like really, feel good.
Yeah, my ego will be through the roof, but then my skill set will just diminish because I won't need to get better. Right. Like I could it'll be like a man with a gun in the Stone Ages.
Yeah.
I'll be the alpha man. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right.
I've fantasized about that too. I've dreamed about that more times. It would be amazing. I'd be the king of the world.
But you wouldn't really get any better. I mean, you would just...
You'd be a crappy hunter too.
Yeah, because you're just solely relying on that one weapon.
It's like when hunters give themselves way too much credit for killing a deer. Like today with like the rifles we have now. It's like, all right, I mean, that's cool and everything. And I'm not against it. I'd probably give it a go one day. But man, imagine in the Stone Age, you had to do it with a spear or a bow and arrow. How much harder that would be? How much closer you have to get to the animal?
Well,
man, that's like some legit skill right there.
Guys like Joe Rogan, bow and arrow hunting elk, which is...
That's badass.
That's pretty badass.
'Cause you got to get close.
You got to get really close, and there's a chance they can charge you and stuff. And
yeah, you got to have some risk though, man. Like you can't.
No, for sure.
Like, that's where the merit comes in. Is it's proportion to the risk. You know?
It's an adventure for them. So I don't know if I would want to bow hunt. I definitely want to hunt.
I never have. I want to. I think I'm not one of those that goes like, oh, I'll never kill. I'm like, no, man. I think it's not something I do just for fun. I mean, I would obviously want to eat the animal afterwards, not just
100%. That's the main motive.
Yeah. Honestly, man, I think I'd be doing it more because I can buy meat. I know there's got to be a merit into killing it yourself that I don't get when I buy it at Walmart. But it's not the meat itself. I think it's the adventure of doing something that was part of our existence for 99.9% of our existence. That's how we got by. And all of a sudden, farming just kind of blew that out of the water, And then all of a sudden, we're like, oh, we're buying food now, which is a new, strange concept when you think in historical terms.
For sure, it is.
I would like that experience. I want that experience. Even fishing, which is not even close. It's not nowhere near as manly as bow hunting.
No, it really isn't.
But it's still fun. Like there's something about fishing that makes it very special, and it's not just sitting quiet by the water with your buddy. it's more, I don't know, there's a connection between you and it's direct. There's no intermediary, there's no one in between me and the food. I have to fish if I want to eat.
Yeah.
Or I can just go in the car and buy, grab a bag of Cheetos. That works too, but it was more fun if you actually catch something.
Man, when I went to French Polynesia with Jamie, the Tahiti, and I think it was in Moorea, they had us in a place, and they go, "Oh, you guys want to go fishing?" I'm like, yeah, let's go fishing. And they just brought us out, like 10 minutes away from the shore, and then they gave us, it was like a little wooden block with nylon and a hook. I'm like, okay, this is a fishing rod. And he's like, all right, they had hermit crabs. You just put the hermit crab in as the bait, throw it out. We caught like 9 fish like in 30 minutes.
Wow.
And it was all like red snappers. We just pull them up. It was like very low resistance. I'm like, this is not that fun.
It's not that, it's too easy. It's not
I'm
fun.
like, Jamie's like, oh, I love it. Like, this is easy. I'm like, yeah, this is normally not how it is.
It's not how you have to sit there a whole day.
Yeah,
maybe catch
3 or 4
something.
hours and you get one catch, if you're lucky. I'm like, this was just like throwing them in and pulling up the line. Like literally, there was twice where I threw it in and I had to pull it out right away because there's so many fish and it was such a there's nobody there, so these fish are not ready for this game. I'm like, yeah, it takes away a lot of the fun out of it, even though it was good for eating. Like we
you don't have to wait. I will say this, like it's the opposite is even worse. Like the opposite, like sitting there for 8 hours and not catching anything. Yeah. I've done that too. So, but for the most part, like I'm with. It's like it's both. Like you want to grind. It's like not similar analogy. I don't play video games, but I used to when I was a kid. The game is too easy. It's not fun. Yeah. But it's not fun if it's too hard either. Like there are some of those games. Prince of Persia. You ever play that game?
Yeah.
That was impossible. And then on Nintendo, you couldn't beat that game, man. I was like, I'm not done with this thing. I'd play it for like 15 minutes. Like I'm out. Because it was so hard.
That was like one of the first games I remember playing. My grandfather, he had a bunch of computer games, and when we were in Venezuela, and when you're in Venezuela in the golden ages, you didn't go outside. It's too dangerous. So we had a lot of hide and go seek. And a lot of video games and Nintendo because you go outside, you're getting shot and mugged or whatnot. So I think Prince of Persia was one of like the first computer games I remember playing.
Yeah.
And people playing now, they're like, oh, the 3D thing. Like,
no. The Nintendo version.
Yeah, no, mine was even older. It was like I think it was a 286 computer, but 2-dimensional little block character, and you had like 60 minutes to finish the game.
That's gotta be one of the oldest games ever. Like that's like Pac-Man old, man, isn't it? Like it goes way back.
Yeah, I mean, not Pac-Man old, but Pong obviously I think is the first one that ever came out.
That's like 70s though.
Yeah,
right.
But this was I think late 80s.
So it's like just before Super Mario.
Yeah. But I remember playing that. But yeah, and that was a fun game. Although it is very frustrating because you can die a lot, and then you're also time limited. And that's something I think people who play video games now don't understand. Like, because you have like saves, and you can always restore where you were.
Oh, everyone's a winner.
Yeah, it's very
everyone's
hard
a winner.
To lose in the modern era. That's what I've noticed because I watched like the nephews play, and a few games I've played. You can always come back to where you were, and it goes back into what you're saying with struggle, where those earlier games were a little bit more rewarding in the sense that they were very challenging, but if you got to finish, you're like, oh.
Yeah, it was, and you couldn't. I don't know, like I beat Super Mario on the original Nintendo, but it took me years to do it. It was years, man, until I could beat that game because you have 3 lives.
Yeah.
And the game goes on for like 8 hours. You got to play that thing, whatever it is, and then you can only die 3 times, twice, right?
Yeah, that's something like that. Yeah.
And then I think you could gain a life here and there. You get a 1-up or whatever. Yeah. But there was like almost like a level. There's a focus, and I think games are too rewarding. Maybe that's why they're so addicting too, is because it's nonstop reward.
Yeah,
it's nonstop. You're a winner. Everyone's a winner, and you don't have to be that good to be a winner in the game anymore.
I remember one of the last games I played that I thought was really interesting was it was called like Aliens versus Predator, and they had like a super hard mode, which is you only die, and if you die once, you lose.
Yeah,
and the levels were like longer. They're like 20-30 minutes, but it was like a horror game. So
I think I remember that now.
So having to play through the whole round, and you might only see like an alien once, but you just don't know when in that 20 minutes it's going to happen. So it was very suspenseful. So I thought, man, this was genius because the game was very simple. But because you had that one life, you were very like nervous the whole time. And you did everything much more secure versus when you're playing a game, like I remember like Doom had like God mode, right?
Yeah.
And you can't die. You just go reckless, like
and
you're
there's
walking around
zero
like
brain thought into it. Yeah. There's no strategy. Yeah.
But the level of stress you perceive is very different. So it's funny, we're talking about game, but it's the same thing with like when you're doing, martial arts or whatnot. When you're fighting somebody who you're much better than, you start playing around and goofing off and you don't take it as seriously because like, oh, I can handle this guy. He's a white belt, I'm a black belt. But if you put yourself against someone who, like if I'm going against you, like, okay, A game on, I got to be super cautious. I can't like leave anything there. The level of stress rises up a lot more. But there's greater challenge. If I'm able to hit a technique off, it's like, damn, I got something good. So going back to the beginning, by raising the bar of the whole sport, by like selling your instructionals or giving out the secrets, you're giving yourself the chance to be rewarded again for because I'm going to make your leg lock game better if I start giving you all the leg lock secrets. And that's going to force me either A, to get an even better leg lock game to counter what you've come up with, or I have to develop other parts of my game.
And not get there. Getting really good and not getting stuck there.
Yeah. I think someone like, for example, Gordon Ryan has shown a lot of versatility in like his game, right? Like everybody, first he saw leg locks. And then he started unlocking people, and and then he started taking the back. And now he's like, now that he's gotten pretty big, he seems just to be arm triangling the hell out of everybody.
Yeah.
So like he just had a win over Mateus Diniz. Yeah, very dominant win. So, and he's another guy who's doing lots of instructionals, and I think he's made more money now doing the instructionals than with fighting, with the competing and the sponsors.
For sure, I'd say that's where the money is. But like it's a successful model. Why you prove yourself in competition, and then you want to show the world what is it that you're doing.
I think that's unique to our sport as well. I can't think of maybe I'm not the market, so I don't see it. But I don't see like football players showing, this is how as a quarterback I get the best spiral, or I don't see that.
MMA, you don't see it. Yeah. I mean, I've taught MMA seminars and they're flops. Like if I release an MMA instruction, which I thought about doing many times, I change my mind halfway through, even like writing down a script, because I know it's not going to sell. MMA fans don't buy it. Like it's a fan-based sport, right? Football, MMA, jiu-jitsu is not only practitioner, but there's something about, once again, the open software mentality. It is always being tweaked, and no matter how much time we both spend doing kimuras, we're going to end up with similar conclusions, but not always identical.
Right.
See what I'm saying? So there's always room for like, oh, this is Dave's version, this is like so-and-so's version and whatnot. And I think that makes it even more appealing because it makes it more complex. Because the question every white belt always asks is, what's the best one? Because that's the white belt. It's a linear, simplistic mentality, right? Like it's a hierarchy: best, second best, third best. So this is how I should practice: the best, and then the second best, and that's it, right? Why would you need a fourth one? You got three best ones. And we know that fighting has nothing to do with any of that. And I think that's one reason why it's so appealing, because there's no end to it. It's not one of those things where you can go, okay, I know what the best moves are now. Well, that kind of kills the sport, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If we know what the best sweep is, it kind of, we're done then. Like there's a best sweep for every moment. And that's what makes it so complicated. White belts hate that answer, because that's the answer I always give them, because it's a vague answer, right? They hate it. People have been training for a year or two to begin to understand, like, okay, I know what you're talking about now. And that's what makes it appealing.
Yeah, it's not as simple.
As if it were to be boring. Like, think about it. Imagine if you had the best takedown, like everyone would be doing the same thing, and it's so predictable. And I mean, where's the growth? Where's the development? Like the art, you have literally reached a limit to the coding of the art. Like, imagine if you were, I'm trying to think of an analogy here. Like, you run out of moves in chess. Like, the fact that it's infinite makes it more appealing. And and if you look at like someone like Mateus and Gordon, they're completely different. They're both highly successful, but they're completely different in terms of style. And everyone, like, look at every ADCC champion or every IBJJF champion.
Yeah.
They're not, I mean, you get guys that are somewhat similar, like a really good open guard, called Bring and Rafael Mendes, for example. Both of them known for their open guards. They're very different. They're both open guard players, but they don't play the same way. I think that right there is what just broadens the canon, like infinitely. And this is why I think jiu-jitsu is one of those sports where it's never going to stop evolving. And then you add the lapels now, man, that's like a whole new pickle. I can barely keep up. I'm like, slow the hell down, bro. What are you doing? It's like a whole new layer that just been added to jiu-jitsu that wasn't there. I mean, it was, but not sophisticated. It was very simple, very crude.
I saw, I'm just laughing because Humo Bahal put a video of him doing a knee cut pass.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw it. Absolutely brutal. And I wrote him after. This is why I don't do the gi. Because he had the hold of it was just like the seat of the pants as he was passing. So it ended up giving this guy like the worst wedgie of life.
Yeah.
And this is like a black belt competition. And he's sliding, but as he's sliding, he's pulling up.
He's got a rash in his butt afterwards.
He was framing.
Yeah.
He gave up the frame and he was trying to grab his shorts, the pants, and pull him down.
Because the wedgie was hurting so much.
It was like an atomic wedgie. Like a level beyond, I think anybody could probably make it. You imagine Homola pulling it. It must be strong as hell. Yeah. And the guy went tapped like a moment later. I think Homola got him with a choke or whatnot. But you see it, this guy's hand went down to his pants. I'm like, yeah, hard pass on that thing, man.
It's funny. No, but yeah, it's but like it's just all these layers to it, man, and I think it's never gonna stop. I think that there's something about being newly familiar, just recently introduced to jiu-jitsu and really hyped up and like watched on DVD sets. Let's say your average 22-year-old purple belt with a shoyu gi, right? And he feels like, I got this. I am at the pinnacle of jiu-jitsu technique. And he believes that, because I did too at some point, Yeah. And then there's always someone that comes along and does something you never even thought about. Like completely different. Like, holy cow, like that's incredible, right? Like, wow. Like, how can I not have thought about that 20 years ago, whatever. I don't think that ever ends. I don't think there's going to be a time where there's not going to be something new. This is why, like, I don't know who I was talking about this the other day. I was talking about, like, innovation. I'm like, the only thing that is unusual about innovation is that you guys think there's something unusual going on. That's what's unusual. It's always been the case. The innovation you're watching now, it's not like it wasn't around 10 years ago. It just happened slower.
Right.
The internet just accelerated it, and competition as well. So you have competition, more competitors, more competitions, and you have the internet and just like augments that. Yeah, no wonder we're watching. It's like a new move every day.
Yeah, I wonder at what point do we see a slowdown? Because I do think there's going to come to
a plateau. Yeah.
There's going to come to a point where we've essentially explored all the possible ways of twisting a limb, right?
Yeah.
Right now, there's still a lot of versatility just because we have so many levers to pull out and on both ends. So you're seeing people doing, kimura, and then you do omoplata, and then there's people doing barata platas, and then the toriko platas. Like, there's all these different.
I can't keep up with the names, by the way.
Yeah, like I just recently learned the difference between barata plata and toriko plata, because I would see them both and they look somewhat similar, but there is a very subtle difference between. There's a significant difference between the two, but I mean, at a certain point, though, we're gonna run out of things, because it's not exactly like we're comparing computer technology innovation, which we can see as endless because we're updating the hardware, right? So the hardware is changing.
It's true.
So it gives us more room to expand.
Yeah.
We're sticking with the same hardware.
Yeah, body's the same.
So we're changing software, but at a certain point, there's a hardware limitation, right? Like,
it's true. It's very true.
I can't bend the arm anymore, or you can't, rotate the shoulder anymore. So we're stuck with what we have.
I know the way to modify hardware, and like, it sounds like science fiction, but it is part of the discussion at this point, is genetically modified humans.
Yeah.
That's
happening to an extent.
It's happening. You ever watch Gattaca? You ever watch Gattaca?
Yes, yeah.
Dude, that's one of the best movies of all time. Like, it's one of my favorite, because like it's we're not too far away from that. No. We are moving towards genetically engineered humans.
Sure.
And then when you get that, I want my baby to have like the strongest grip. I want them to have gorilla grips. Can I have gorilla grips in a little newborn? You have like a 5-year-old child with gorilla grip. And that's not impossible.
You're looking for double tendons.
Yeah, double tendons. Like, give me like Vinny Magallanes, like ankles and knees. Like, fine. I never worried about a footlock again.
I forget there was a famous wrestler that was known that had double tendons on his wrists.
Yeah. And
they would say that when he grabbed your wrist, it felt like your wrist was going to break.
I believe that.
And he was just literally, and he just had it makes a big difference. But yeah, that's coming into play, and the people who are becoming pharmacists and getting all sorts of crazy
100%.
supplements and whatnot. Like,
but I think
I
genetics is the big more than steroids.
Right.
I think steroids have a ceiling to what they can do for you.
Sure.
Because having taken steroids, I know for a fact that there's not like it's not exponential. It does that and then it doesn't do more. It does improvement and then it plateaus. It can only do so much, right? But when you're modifying genetics, you can actually make us as strong as a gorilla. You could do that. You can make every single muscle in your body not human, like in theory, right? And I don't think we're 20 years away from that. The way technology is expanding, I think we're going to see it in our lifetime, and it's going to raise all these ethical issues about sports. Because now if you're poor, you're screwed. It's not going to be the weight and the drug testing and the weight that's going to make things fair. It's going to be, are you poor or are you rich? Because if you're rich, you can go to a geneticist and modify your children. Yeah. Right? And then if you're poor, you're screwed with it's Gattaca, right? You have a natural born child, you're going to clean toilets for the rest of your life. Whereas, if you're genetically engineered, you're going to win Olympics, you're going to be an astronaut and so on. It's going to happen. Like it's kind of a scary world when you think about it, because like technology has that, it's a double-edged sword, right? It can make the world incredible and it makes it incredibly shitty at the same time. I just got done watching that documentary, Social Dilemma. Have you watched it?
Not yet.
I made my kids watch it. You'd be surprised. My kids are like, Daddy, yeah, you're right. Like, less iPad. Like, even my kids, they're 7 and 9. They're like, yeah, that's crazy. Because they can see that we're all way too into this internet. Way more than we should. We're not really equipped to deal with it. But so like, going back to technology, it has that double edge aspect to it. It can be incredibly helpful, exponentially incredibly helpful, and exponentially incredibly demeaning and in detriment of humanity. Really.
Well, it's a tool that becomes a crutch at a certain point, right? And I think that's the problem. And it's interesting we're bringing genetics into it, because that's a different path, right? Like essentially, like, are we going to go more technological, become like cyborgs?
I think so.
Or do we become more genetically enhanced and become like superhumans? So these are two different. I would prefer the superhuman route because it sounds cooler, and there's also at least you're still human. At a certain point, if you get cyborg, you become more robot than human, and then at a certain point, now you're just a machine.
Well, it's kind of happened. People getting hip replacements, knee replacements.
Yeah.
Well, that cell phone is already part of your body because it's on you 24/7. It's just not inside your body. Like I remember reading an article where it's actually going to be inside your brain. They can actually put a little chip inside your mouth, and you can call and text people without touching, without even having a phone.
Your favorite guy, Elon Musk, he's on that with Neuralink. They're already testing it on people where they put a chip that I guess has electrodes that connect to your brain. They're using it initially, I think, for elderly people to try to speed up connections and whatnot. I don't really know. But they already have that there, But the theory is that eventually they'll be able to implant knowledge and other stuff into it.
And I wonder, this is my issue with it, is because the kind of knowledge that'll be implanted in your brain, much like social media, is selected.
Yeah.
So you're gonna miss out. This is the point people don't get, because people have argued with me like, I don't need to read books, Rob. Like, I got Google. I can Google and get the answers. That's not the point of reading. It's not the point of studying. It's learning how to think.
Yeah.
It's learning how to interpret data. You have information, and you're able to intelligently decide where the truth is, right? Like, you can actually judge and critique the data. If you're having information coming from Google and it's being uploaded to your brain through Google, where's the knowledge? I mean, are you really wise? It's not your information. You're just repeating what someone gave you, and it becomes an incredibly powerful tool of control. And that's basically what Social Dilemma is about. And it's going to get worse, and they're talking about that, because it builds on itself as a snowball effect. We become ever more reliant on Wikipedia, ever more reliant on Google. Like, there's certain things you Google that you can't find the answer for. You're going to have to dig 5-6 pages. Start digging some controversial topics, things that are not part of the American political spectrum, for example. You have to go to page 7, 8, 9 to find it, because they're not politically correct, or they're outside of the spectrum. They're outside of the debate. So Google, like, they can control, limit what kind of information you have, which is it borders on dictatorial powers, but we're volunteering for it. That's what's so strange, is that we're volunteering to have our opinions shaped by half a dozen people in Silicon Valley.
Well, it's funny because I was looking up, we have elections coming up. I got one of these ballots, example ballots, I wanted to look at, and you see the list, and of course, presidential candidates, vice presidential candidates, we're very familiar with them. But then you have like 20 or so judges, and I'm looking, I don't know any of these people. Like, how am I supposed to make an informed decision? And then when you like Google, like, like a Nevada voter guide or something like that, it just tells you, like conservative guy pick these people, liberal or Democrat side pick these people. I'm like, that doesn't really help me. Like, I want to know why I should pick somebody.
100%. Like, it tells you the party because you're voting for the team. You're not voting for his ideas.
Right, which is horrible. And,
I agree.
At least like the questions, I can find like people's viewpoints and I can make like an informed decision. But it goes more to the point where you have to take a big leap of faith and believe that the people who are telling you this is real is real. And as we've seen in recent times, that's shown to be very skewed based on people's biases.
100%.
And like their personal motivations. So it's like, man, harder to research something and find it true, and especially online where it's so easy to fabricate stuff now.
Yeah. Oh, fake news is a thing. Like it's a tool of war at this point.
Yeah.
No, man, and with the judges thing, like I found this out recently. I think I mentioned this to you before, but like these judges, who's financing their campaigns, right? Do you know that? Like, who pays for their campaigns?
Who?
The attorneys.
Oh yeah.
It's not. It's like Washington. This is why Washington is so corrupt. Because who's banking the campaigns of all these congressmen and the president and everyone else? The private sector.
Oh,
lobbyists.
We were looking for that judge that got you over. She's gone. So.
Oh yeah, I found out. Au revoir. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
I was asking my girlfriend's attorney friend, like, she was trying to look up the case to see who the judge was. Like, oh no, she didn't make the primary.
Yeah. Well, considered to be the worst judge in the history of Nevada. She has the worst ratings in the history of Nevada.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Unfortunately, you had to suffer that one.
Oh yeah. Well, it's it's life.
Yeah.
But I like I always say, time is the only judge that matters. Right? Dave, dude, I think it's time. I think we hit our hour mark. This was fun. We started with heel hooks. We ended up talking shit about Google and my former judge. What else, man? Yeah, man, good times, man. Good times. Let's do this more often. Let's get a guest here soon. Guys, just to give myself a plug, my book is out. Did you get to read it? I mean, you haven't started, have you?
I read the first 10, 15 pages. So
you know what I do? When people are like, I put it in the toilet, read a page. Every time you go to the bathroom, read a page. That's what I normally do. Like, I know you're a reader. I know you're busy too. But yeah, like it's on my website, closeguardfilm.com.
From what I've seen, it's been getting really good reviews. You have a lot of the jiu-jitsu elites reading it, so guys, you'll be missing out. I know the little that I've read so far is already intriguing to me, and I know a lot of the tidbits that you've shared with me over the time. So
it's I think it gets better towards the second half, where I start drawing with the conclusions. I think the Japan section of the trip, to me at least, is far more interesting than the Brazil chapter. Maybe because I'm so familiar with Brazilian culture, it's like going home in some ways. It's not. But Japan was a bit of a cultural shock. And I had been to Japan before, but this time I went there with different eyes, and it was an eye-opening experience, personally, not just as a practitioner, filmmaker, right, or whatever. Like as a person, as an individual, it was somewhat of an eye-opening experience. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know when you're done. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll do an episode going over it for sure.
And guys, that's it. If you're ever in Vegas, come visit me and David.
Yep.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Take care.